Oh, definitely. Fragmentation is going to be a huge problem. Now, let's not confuse fragmentation with the need to have competition and different solutions doing slightly different things. We have to have a situation where different systems can join up and interoperate. So the capability for one country's system to be able to communicate with another country's system has to be there. And that comes back to agreeing on a standard, which may be just a communication standard rather than I've got to have data in a particular form that describes an identity in a particular way, that has photographs size in a particular way with particular colors, whatever it is. I don't think it needs to go to that degree. It just means I've got to be able to move data around. Now, there's an added complexity here in that legal systems in countries vary. So what's okay in one country may not be okay in another country. There has to be cognizance taken of that fact, and consideration built in where possible to allow those things to happen. For example, in the identity world, we have a standard being pushed out by W3C based on what's known as self-sovereign identity. The idea that I'm in control of my identity, I am the master of everything that should happen to it. I give permission for who to use it, when to use it, how to use it, and what to use it for. Now, when you think about that for a second, that's great, but that's a lot of work. And I'm of the view that most people are never going to do all that work. So what do? You've got to create a mechanism that still allows things to work. And really what we're saying is that businesses need all this interaction with individuals, but all they really want is give me permission to do what I need to do in order for me to provide the service that you want from me. So it's a delegation rather than me needing to control all these things. So that I delegate authority maybe to my bank, who can go to the government or go to my utility and retrieve the information from there, rather than me having to provide either paper or digital copies of everything. That's a pain in the neck. So it's minimization of that work. Now, the second thing is, in the self-sovereign identity model, you've got GDPR issues where identity information going into a blockchain potentially cannot be erased. The nature of a blockchain is that information will be there forever. That is the power of the blockchain. But under GDPR, I have the right to request any organization to delete me. Not just delete me, erase me. How can I do that if it's in a blockchain? You can't. You've got to get rid of the whole chain. Yet we're building solutions that are being posed as global that just cannot comply with legal standards in the EU, for example. And as more and more countries base their privacy legislation on GDPR, we're going to have the same problem cropping up in different countries all over the world. A technical solution that on the face of it, on one hand, looks brilliant, but cannot comply with the law on the other. That's a recipe for disaster. So fragmentation, we're going to see lots of it. We've got to figure out how to get these systems to interoperate so that we end up with something that works. Well, personal data, if it's an asset, it is also a liability, because it'll sit on one person's personal balance sheet as an asset, but it could be a liability on the other side. Ultimately, I would look at it as an asset that needs to be protected. However, if I've given it to multiple organizations, for example, who don't look after it properly, then it becomes a serious liability for me, and a liability for them, ultimately, if they end up falling foul of some data protection commissioner somewhere because they didn't look after it properly. So again, the system that we've designed contemplates a world where you don't have to give all the information to everybody all the time. It works on the basis of having trusted authorities who become the go-to guys whenever you need something. So when I need a copy of your passport, I have permission to go to the passport office, to retrieve it, do what I need to do with it, but it stays in the passport office. All I have is a digital version of it to do whatever I need, and then I let it go. But I have the right and the permission to retrieve it whenever I need it. So you just end up with a handful of organizations, highly trusted organizations, who have all this information. You know who they are. We've shrunk the surface that potentially could be used to attack an organization from many, many organizations down to only a handful, and limited the ability for that information to be used against me in some way. So this is going to take many, many years to materialize, but that's sort of the end state, or the vision that we would see. Shrinking the pool of trusted data holders to only those who really need to have it. And most of them would be, or a large number of them would be, public bodies of some kind, whether it's governments, utilities, banks of some kind. They're providing public services.